Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Murder Tapes podcast, season 3, episode 2. I spent my weekend at the pool and the gym, which was a lot of fun. Training for the FBI has been a very, very rewarding process. And I did also want to mention that I added the podcast to more streaming platforms, such as Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and many more, which I'm really excited about. Today, we're going to be talking about the Christa Gail Pike case. And every case I cover is sad, but this one hit me like no other. Viewer discretion is advised. Born on March 10th, 1976, Christa's name is etched into history as the youngest woman to receive a death sentence in the United States since the reinstatement of capital punishment. Her sentence came at the age of 20, following her conviction for a brutal crime committed when she was just 18 years old. Christa's early years were marked by challenges. According to her mother, Christa displayed troubling behavior as early as age 8 due to a lack of bonding with her mother after being raised by her grandmother until her grandmother's death in 1988. Christa's grandmother, who raised her, was described as abusive and an alcoholic. After her grandmother's passing, Christa moved between her estranged parents, each struggling with their own challenges. Her mother was a nurse and made an ill-advised attempt to bond with her daughter through marijuana use, following an incident where Christa was physically abused by one of her mother's boyfriends. Her mother's boyfriend whipped Christa with a belt, and she grabbed a butcher knife against him before calling the police. Her aunt would state that she refused to allow her children to associate with her niece because she lived in a filthy home with no ground rules. By age 18, Christa had been expelled from her father's home twice for behavioral issues, including suspicion of sexually abusing her younger half-sister. Before she committed murder, her life was marked by numerous warning signs, such as alleged drug use from a young age, early exposure to adult relationships, and violent outbursts. Christa's mother claimed that she was growing marijuana in pots in her home at 9 years old, and her boyfriend was allowed to live with her at age 14. She struggled in school and eventually dropped out, finding herself in the Job Corps program in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was here that she crossed paths with 17-year-old Daryl Shipp and 18-year-old Shadola Peterson. Together, they explored a darker side, dabbling in the occult and reportedly engaging in devil worship. Their involvement in these activities would culminate in a crime that shocked the nation. A crime involving torture and murder. Christa became jealous of another student, a 19-year-old woman named Colleen Slemmer, because she thought that Colleen was trying to steal her boyfriend, Daryl, away from her. Everyone that knew Colleen stated that she had no interest in Daryl. In fact, Christa's best friend Kim would state Daryl once liked Colleen, but when Christa arrived, that changed. Colleen was known by her peers as very sweet and to herself. She was born and raised in Florida, but attended the Job Corps program in Tennessee to do a 6-month course in computing. Her parents didn't want her to leave because they felt she would be too far away, but Colleen was set on her ways and left October 31st, 1994. She was very close with her mom and sisters, and unfortunately, that would be the last time that they would see her. Christa was doing a nursing program, but still had classes with Colleen. Colleen would tell her mother that 3 individuals, 1 guy and 2 girls, would bother her and take her jewelry and clothes. She didn't mention their names, but it would later be revealed that the individuals were Daryl, Shadola, and Christa. Kim recalls hanging out with Christa and other students and talking about the usual things teens talk about when all of a sudden, the conversation switched to people they don't like. Christa said something about Colleen and then said, "Oh my God, I'm going to kill her," as if it was a normal thing to say. She also said she was going to do it because she felt mean that day. Christa and Shadola planned to lure Colleen into an isolated and abandoned steam plant not too far from campus. They told her they were all going to smoke weed and that they wanted to make peace with her. Kim recalls Christa telling her that they're leaving to the park and will be back later. She then winked at Kim. Kim then watched her from the balcony as they left and said she had a very odd feeling. At around 8:50 p.m. on January 12, 1995, Christa, Daryl, Colleen, and Shadola signed out of the dormitory and proceeded to walk towards the woods near Tyson Park. Before Christa left, she grabbed a meat cleaver and a box cutter. When they arrived, Christa accused Colleen of trying to sleep with her boyfriend. Colleen denied that she ever tried to sleep with her boyfriend, but Christa grabbed Colleen and slammed her head into her knee. Christa then pulled out the meat cleaver and slit Colleen's stomach. Daryl also jumped in and gashed her across her chest. Christa then pulled out the box cutter, and all three of them tortured her by stabbing and slashing her hundreds of times. The three of them got bored of just cutting her, so Christa and Tadero held her down and carved a pentagram into her chest with the meat cleaver. The pentagram was the mark of the devil, and Colleen was still alive at this point. She then threw Colleen on the ground and slammed her head into the concrete. Colleen pleaded and asked, "Why are you doing this to me?" Christa would say, the more Colleen pleaded, the more she got angry. Tadero and Shadola grabbed Colleen when she tried to escape and pushed her back to the ground. Christa would tell police she heard voices telling her to do something in order to prevent Colleen from sending her to prison for attempted murder. Colleen told Christa that she would walk back to her home in Florida without returning to the Job Corps facility for her belongings in order to save her life. Christa then told her to remember who's hurting her and that it was too late. She also told her to shut up because, quote, "it was harder to hurt somebody when they're talking to you." After, Christa reached down and picked a piece of her skull from the gaping hole in her head and placed the blood-soaked piece into her jacket pocket. The whole murder took about 30 minutes and was at one point interrupted because she thought that she heard someone coming. Officer John Terry Johnson testified at trial that the body was found lying on debris and was nude from the waist up. Her body was covered in dirt and blood. Her head was bludgeoned, and she had multiple cuts and slashes on her torso. The crime scene was wet and muddy with hand and knee prints in the mud, along with drag marks, and the bushes were trampled. There was also a large pool of blood about 30 feet from Colleen's body. Colleen was laying face down in a pile of debris, and when officers turned her over, they noticed the slash marks on her neck. There was also a bloody rag around her neck. Detective Donald R. Cook from the UT Police Department accompanied her body to the morgue. When he looked at it closer, he noticed it had been cleaned and that there was a pentagram carved into her chest. One of the responding officers recalls not knowing if he was looking at her face because of how mutilated her body was. The medical examiner, Dr. Sandra Elkins, explained that due to the extensive nature of the wounds inflicted upon Colleen, standard procedure of labeling each major injury with a letter became inadequate during the autopsy. Resorting to labeling wounds with combinations like AA, BB, and CC, the examiner expressed the sheer volume of superficial slash wounds across Colleen's arms, torso, and neck. Quote, "I basically threw up my hands and just said innumerable more superficial slash wounds on the back, arms, and chest." She also stated there were multiple purple contusions on her knees, meaning that she got bruised while trying to crawl away, along with defensive wounds on her right arm. Dr. Elkins also stated in order to determine the cause of death, she needed to remove Colleen's head from her body and brain so that forensic anthropologist Dr. Murray Marks could examine her brain. Officer Mark A. Wagner, a member of the Knoxville Police Department, testified that he recovered a pair of black gloves and 2 of Colleen's ID cards from the Texaco station on Cumberland Avenue. These items were entered as evidence. Officer Laney Janeway used a chart to outline each location where blood or evidence was discovered. Photographs showing bloody chunks of asphalt, blood on leaves, and pools of blood were presented as evidence. Additionally, the bloody piece of asphalt and Colleen's bloody clothing were submitted into evidence. Special Agent Raymond A. DePriest, a forensic scientist with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, stated that he received blood samples from the shoes and clothing of Crystal and Tadero. Samples determined to have human blood were sent to the DNA unit. Margaret Bush, from the DNA unit, testified that she couldn't analyze the blood from Christa and Tadero's shoes, but confirmed that blood from their clothing matched Colleen's DNA profile. These injuries were noted to have been inflicted while Colleen's heart was still beating, as evidenced by the red appearance surrounding each wound. Quote, "The area around each wound was red in appearance, indicating that the heart had still been beating when the wound was inflicted. Tragically, these wounds were part of the torture inflicted upon Colleen before her death, contributing to the horrific nature of the crime." The Tennessee Appeals Court said, quote, "She also testified that none of the aforementioned wounds have rendered the victim unconscious. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. The right frontal area of her skull was fractured, and so was the bridge of her nose. On January 13th, the day the victim's body was found, Randy York, a criminal investigator with the Knoxville Police Department, commenced his investigation into the case. The following day, January 14th, Randy conducted separate interviews with the defendant Christa and Daryl at the Knoxville Police Department. During these interviews, Randy informed defendant Christa of her Miranda rights, which she chose to waive. Christa proceeded to provide a detailed account of the killing. Her statement, spanning approximately 46 pages, was recorded on tape and subsequently transcribed. Copies of the transcription were provided to the jury, who were allowed to listen to the recording using individual headphones during the trial. At around 11 p.m., Christa went into Kim's dorm and confessed that she had just killed Colleen and how. In order to prove she did, she showed her a piece of Colleen's skull. She then went into detail about how she forced Colleen to remove both her shirt and bra. She then beat her with a chunk of asphalt, slashed her throat open, and carved a pentagram into both her chest and forehead. Kim stated that she was in shock, while Christa was stating what she did. She was dancing in a circle, smiling, and singing La La La. The following morning, Kim saw Christa at breakfast and asked her what she did with the piece of Colleen's skull, and Christa replied that it was in her pocket and said, quote, "Yes, I'm eating breakfast with it." The following day, Christa told another student a very similar story and then pointed to the brown spots on her shoes and said, quote, "That ain't mud on my shoes, that's blood." Christa told them that Colleen's brains and blood were pouring out. She then showed off the piece of her skull again. Oddly, Kim and another student never reported Christa's claims to anyone. On January 13th at 8 a.m., Knoxville Police and the University of Tennessee Police Department were sent to the greenhouses on the agricultural campus, where an employee found what he thought was the remains of an animal. It was the body of Colleen Slemmer. The three were arrested within 36 hours. The police quickly established Christa's connection to the murder. Police looked at the logbook and initially saw the four of them signed out at the same time, but only 3 came back. By an apparent stroke of fate, as Sigmund Freud famously noted, there are no accidents. Christa had left a jacket behind in a counselor's office on January 13th. When the counselor returned after a long weekend and learned of Christa's suspected involvement in the crime, they promptly turned the jacket over to the police. In its pocket, investigators discovered a piece of bone from Colleen's skull. Before we proceed, it's important to note that Colleen's family has been seeking to have her skull released from the coroner's custody. They wish to cremate it and scatter the ashes, similar to what they did with the rest of her body. However, because it is considered evidence, the skull will remain locked away until the appeals process is completed. Although the jacket provided compelling evidence, it turned out to be unnecessary for the prosecution's case. On the same day, January 13th, Christa voluntarily confessed to the killing during a police interview. She agreed to a search of her dorm room, where police found her blood-soaked jeans. Christa cooperated further by leading authorities to the trash bin, where she had discarded Colleen's ID and gloves. She then guided them to the crime scene, providing a detailed account of the events. Daryl's room was searched, and a satanic Bible and altar were found. According to Christa, tensions had been mounting between her and Colleen over a mutual romantic interest. Christa claimed that Colleen had previously threatened her with a box cutter one night. On the day of the murder, Christa asserted that her initial intent was merely to confront Colleen verbally, as she felt provoked by Colleen's behavior. She claimed she wanted to scare her, but things got out of hand. She cried throughout the proceedings, but the jury didn't seem to care. There were also photos of Christa and Daryl wearing pentagram necklaces while giving their statements. She was convicted on both charges following just 2.5 hours of deliberation. On March 30th, 1996, she received a death sentence by electrocution for murder. And on June 6th, 1996, she was sentenced to 25 years for conspiracy. Daryl was given a life sentence with the possibility of parole, and Shadola got probation after pleading guilty to being an accessory after the fact. Following her guilty verdict, Christa launched, canceled, and relaunched an appeal of her conviction in the Tennessee state courts. In both June of 2001 and June 2002, against the evidence of her lawyers, Christa then asked courts to drop her appeal and sought to be executed via electrocution. Criminal court judge Mary Beth Leibovitz granted the request, and an execution date of August 19, 2002 was set. Shortly thereafter, Christa reversed course. On July 8, 2002, her defense lawyers filed a motion to proceed with the appeal process, but it was initially denied. However, on August 2, 2002, a 3-judge panel of the state appeals court decided to allow the proceedings to continue, halting her execution. In December 2008, Christa's latest request for a new trial was rejected, and she was returned to death row. This denial is believed to exhaust her appeals under Tennessee's legal procedures. As of December 2009, no execution date has been scheduled, and it remained uncertain whether she pursued an appeal of her conviction in the federal court system. On August 24, 2001, Christa, allegedly aided by inmate Natasha Cornett, attacked and tried to strangle fellow inmate Patricia Jones with a shoestring, nearly succeeding in killing her. Christa was convicted of attempted first-degree murder on August 12, 2004. While the Tennessee Department of Corrections maintains that Natasha assisted in the crime, their investigators determined there was insufficient evidence to charge her for aiding Christa in attacking Patricia. I also wanted to add that Natasha was a Satan worshiper and was in prison for shooting and killing a Knoxville couple and their 6-year-old daughter. Their 2-year-old son was also shot but lived. As for Patricia Jones, she was in prison for stabbing an 84-year-old to death 77 times. In March 2012, it came to light that Christa had devised escape plans involving corrections officer Justin Heflin and a man from New Jersey named Donald Coet. Coet had visited Christa in prison, although the full nature of his relationship with Christa was not immediately disclosed. The attempted prison break was foiled through a coordinated effort by the Tennessee Department of Corrections, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and the New Jersey State Police. Donald was charged with bribery and conspiracy to commit escape and was held at the Hunterdon County Department of Corrections on $250,000 bail. Justin turned himself into authorities and was booked into the Davidson County Jail for $75,000 bail. Justin was charged with bribery, conspiracy to commit escape, and facilitation to commit escape. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation reported that Justin was receiving money and gifts for his involvement in organizing this escape. However, Justin's father, Johnny Heflin from Charlotte, Tennessee, stated his son informed him that Donald had threatened him into participating in the escape scheme. Quote, "From what I've been told, this guy threatened him and said he'd harm him and his family. He mentioned that his son has been cooperating with investigators and providing them with details about the plan. Quote, he fully intended to do the right thing. He acknowledged that he made poor choices. Justin is currently housed alone in the Special Management Unit at Davidson County Jail for his safety. His father expressed concern that his son might be at risk in jail due to his former role as a guard. Quote, my main worry is for his safety. Dorinda Carter, spokeswoman for the Tennessee Department of Corrections, stated that investigators received information about the plot early in its development. Quote, fortunately, our investigators learned about the threat early on. However, any threat to the prison or public safety is taken very seriously. Dorinda added that Christa is facing disciplinary action and is likely to face criminal charges related to the plot. Christa is permitted visitors, but is separated by a glass window and cannot have physical contact with them. Psychiatric evaluations found Christa to be intelligent with an IQ of 111. Which clinicians found to be remarkable considering how she was raised and the fact that she was a dropout. She was diagnosed with marijuana dependency, inhalant abuse, and borderline personality disorder, a condition characterized by poor impulse control and unstable relationships. People that have borderline personality disorder are similar to psychopaths and can be labeled as just as dangerous. It is called borderline personality disorder because it was once believed that individuals with this disorder were on the borderline between neurosis and psychosis. They judged her to be sane in legal terms and found no symptoms of brain damage. Despite her diagnoses, Christa was deemed legally sane and fully aware of the wrongfulness of her actions. In some cases, things like frontal lobe damage can correlate to violence. Christa's subsequent actions, including attempted murder while on death row, further underscored her propensity for violence and disregard for societal norms. Her behavior left authorities and observers grappling with the question of how to handle someone so evidently dangerous and resistant to rehabilitation. According to criminologist Katherine Ramslin, individuals with borderline personality disorder are resistant to treatment because, quote, like vampires, these people just drain a therapist and move on to the next one. Even Christa's own family observed her refusal to conform to societal norms from an early age. They believe she is unlikely to change. There is no chance that she can change now. At best, Tennessee taxpayers will have to maintain her in custody until she becomes too old and frail to pose a threat to anyone. Though, even then, I wouldn't trust her completely. Shortly after her conviction and death sentence, Christa penned a letter to her boyfriend, lamenting the treatment she endured from the court. Quote, "You see what I get for trying to be nice to that hoe? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'd die quickly, instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more. And they F and fry me? Ain't that some shit?" An expert neurologist named Dr. John Henry Pincus took a look inside Christa's brain in 2001 and said by the time she was born, she'd begun developing the capacity to kill. He stated that from his experience, every killer he's examined has 3 features, including brain damage, a history of abuse, and mental illness. He also stated that Christa had all 3. He believed her boozing mother put her on the path to murder when she drank while pregnant, but Christa's mom denied that. According to his research, her frontal lobes are not put together properly. Quote, "It's the frontal lobe where a sense of right and wrong is developed and recorded. Her ability to do this was damaged from the get-go. Her grandfather worked at a slaughterhouse, and she played in that area. Christa saw lots of twisted images on the TV. Pornography and horror flicks were routinely played. Christa claimed that she was a victim of physical and sexual abuse by people, including family members. There is no doubt that Christa was responsible for killing Colleen, and she has been deemed legally sane. Nevertheless, Tennessee courts are confronted with the challenge of determining the appropriate course of action due to the extreme depravity evident in her actions. The dilemma arises: can someone so morally bankrupt truly be held accountable? It's a logical question to wonder if someone who commits such heinous acts must be mentally ill. Yet, despite her disturbing behavior, Christa is consistently found not mentally ill. She simply lacks empathy. Understanding that murder is wrong and being capable of participating in her own defense are benchmarks of legal sanity. Given her demonstrated capabilities, prospects for rehabilitation appear bleak because she adamantly refuses any form of assistance. Her subsequent attempt to strangle another inmate while on death row in July 2004 resulted in an additional 25-year sentence. In conclusion, Christa Gail Pike's life and crimes offer a sobering reflection on the complexities of criminal behavior, challenging simplistic explanations of nature versus nurture. Her story serves as a stark reminder of how the profound impact of upbringing, mental health issues, and personal choices on one's trajectory towards violence. This case, the crime scene photos, the documentaries are all just so sad and terrifying. I mean, I could not imagine what was going through Colleen's head, what's going through her family's head during the trial, and after just being informed about what happened and knowing that the last time they saw her would be the last time that they would ever see her again. It is extremely, extremely sad, and I am truly sorry for everyone in her family, and I think that it is, again, just very, very important for me to mention, as I do in most episodes, that you truly have to be extremely careful on who you trust and are comfortable with going into these spaces in, because you never know what their intentions are. I really hope that Colleen's family has been able to heal. I know that her mom has mentioned that she really, really wants Christa to get the death penalty, and unfortunately that has not happened, and we're still, getting updates, but I will keep you guys updated. It will more than likely be on the Instagram, so definitely check in on there and see if there's any updates. As always, all evidence will be linked in the show notes. It will also be on our Instagram at Murder Tapes Podcast. Feel free to follow my personal as well at Annalisa, and thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you on the next one.